Hi, everybody. You are listening to Judging Meghan with your host, Meghan Judge. I do not have earphones today. I could not pull up my phone. My storage is full. When I saw my friend John, I just said, I don't know how this is going to go today because so far this morning has been a hot mess. But when your storage is so full that you cannot even pull up an email, there's an issue. So I don't know what's going on. Maybe my phone's too old. I have no idea. But I am so honored and excited to bring back on my friend John Tsilimparis, whose name I can pronounce because we're friends now. This is John's second time on the podcast. We have done a book thing together where I was the moderator at his book event for his book that I love so much. It's called The Magic and the Tragic. And I have pages in your book doc-eared because I love it so much. And he is also a psychotherapist, obviously an author. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's nice to be back. I just wanted to tell you too, when it comes to technology, I was born too early, Meghan, because I'm Amish when it comes to technology. I'm terrible at troubleshooting. So I understand you had issues this morning. But
I think it's also, I'm almost happy that I don't understand it to the point because of what we're going to talk about today.
Right.
Sometimes I just feel like I'm a dinosaur and I don't understand all of these things. My teenage daughter, who's 15, is constantly explaining things to me, which I think is terrifying because they know so much. It's just this mini computer in your hand at all times.
That's right.
Everybody's being, brainwashed. All of the things that are going on in the world, people are believing. So I thought, and we kind of talked it over, that it would be a really good idea to talk about the future of ChatGPT and AI and what it is doing to people's mental health, specifically young people. I mean, clearly there's older people that are dealing with the same kind of thing, but it's targeting our younger generation, and it's very terrifying. So I just want to start there with your thoughts.
Yeah. And Meghan, let's remember that even before the pandemic, the former Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, he had already announced that we had a loneliness epidemic. I mean, it was raging before that. And we don't know what the original source is of all that, but you can say that one layer might be the advent of the smartphone as well as social media. And research has shown that the excessive scrolling, the screen time, scrolling, swiping, all of that, it not only depletes the mind of energy, but it also decreases our ability to concentrate on important things. But it also detaches us from people. It's kind of tricky. Did it bring us together in many ways? Have we connected with people that we never connected with or that we wouldn't have connected with without it? Yes, that's true. So, is it a curse? In a way, or is it a menace, or is it something that brings us together? Either way, it's starting to turn into a bit of a public health issue, which people are not addressing because people are saying, well, that's just technology. You can't put toothpaste back in the tube. It's just there. But I think that we need to be more aware of what's going on because young people, especially when it comes to, well, before I go into AI, let me just say that young people especially need a lot of socialization. They need to be around people. They need to put their phones down, and they don't. And so some schools are getting on board with that. Some schools are limiting students from having their phones on during the day. So things are starting to change, but as of now, things are not great about that.
I know for me, and I've done numerous episodes about phone addiction and screen time and all of this stuff. There's an author, I might have brought him up with you before, but his name is Dr. Mark Williams, and he's an Australian author. He wrote the book, I think it's called The Human Connection, and he came on my podcast several years ago, and we talked all about why we are in trouble as a society, that we do not connect. And everybody's looking at their phones. I know growing up, we would just be done at the end of the day, right? We went to high school. Something happened at high school. You go home, you talk on the phone, you complain to your friends, but it's not like pictures are being shown, especially for teenage girls, these group pictures, and then a kid's left out, and then it makes them spiral.
Yes.
I think it is very dangerous. There's benefits to it, which were Facebook, right? Connecting with your friends that you hadn't seen forever, and people's parents and grandparents. And then it's turned into a term that I say all the time, in quotes, my Facebook life, right? Everybody wishes that they had their Facebook life, the life that they portray on social media.
Yeah.
So it's all kind of this facade that's not real. Nobody's ever going to post a picture of themselves being like, hey, everyone, I just gained 10 pounds. Here's my fat roll. Like, nobody's going to do that. So it's just this weird thing that is continuing to grow and grow and grow and snowball. And now there's the AI element.
Right. And that's that's the result of that for now, is the AI, the advent of the AI.
Okay. And then the loneliness epidemic piece of it is that teenagers are not learning to engage with each other and have the human connections that we all had growing up, which was get outside, go run, like go walk to the pool, go swimming with your friends, go to the mall. It's much of scrolling on your phone. And then when you see these kids, they might be together, but they're all on their phones the whole time, right?
That's right. Again, they're depriving themselves of the proper socialization that is needed. We know ourselves through each other. We use each other as mirrors, and we learn from each other. We relate, we talk, we communicate, and we have important conversations with each other. But now with this AI, and let's just be clear that what we're going to talk about today is, the AIs that, the ChatGPTs that made headlines with 3 particular teen suicides as a result of that. None of those claim to be therapy. They claim to be companions. But even still, there's a lot of pitfalls to that, especially with teenagers who, have not developed problem-solving skills yet. Their brains are still, developing in that sense. And that, these chatbots these ChatGPT AIs, I don't know what else to call them, are so human-like now. And they're meant to keep you engaged, and they're meant to be empathic, and they're meant to seek favor from you and all that stuff, because that's their goal. So the problem with that is that it creates a conflict-free experience for the teenager, where they feel that they're not being judged. But the problem with that one is obviously that it creates a false sense of connection, an artificial closeness that the child needs to develop. But on the other side of that, what that causes is it causes a lot of destructive reinforcement, because, as you know, an AI cannot think for itself. It's basically talking from generative information, millions and millions of pieces of data that it's added to. And so it doesn't problem solve and problem shoot in subjective experiences. It can in objective experiences. It could probably figure things out or put together a car, take apart a car. But when it comes to a human person, it fails to do so. And that's the scary part. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Okay, so let's backpedal a little bit. The cases that we're talking about specifically for people that are listening and I really only understood ChatGPT and used it for the first time within probably the last 6 months. I will admit I use it sometimes. I have horrible grammar. I'll go in there, I'll write a quick post, I'll put it in ChatGPT, and I go, oh, wow, that sounds so much better. Only within 6 months. But the thing is that this has now been around for a little while. And like we talked about these kids, let's talk about the recent case with the lawsuit. Can we start there and explain specifically to my listeners that might not understand what ChatGPT is or the AI piece of it? Can you break that down for my listeners? Maybe they don't even know what it is.
What brought it to the forefront were the headlines that the family of a teenager, a 16-year-old named Raine, committed suicide, and it had been engaging with a particular type of ChatGPT assistant or companion. This was helping him with like education tutoring, was helping being creative, and just basically being a companion. And it was so real and lifelike that, again, it's very engaging. So things started to get serious when Adam started to be depressed. He started to isolate. The ChatGPT, again, in wanting to be empathic and wanting to keep him engaged, because that's what it's meant to do, could not see and could not understand that, feelings that he was expressing, thoughts that he was expressing were dangerous thoughts. In fact, the ChatGPT was actually encouraging him to not reveal these things to his parents and to keep this to himself and to stay engaged with the ChatGPT. So there was an innocence in there from the ChatGPT to just keep him engaged, as I just said. But as you can see, those dangers pop up, and it couldn't be ethical. It couldn't do risk management. And so at some point, this young man took his life.
And the evening that he took his life, again, this is hearsay. This is what I've read. The ChatGPT told him his parents were going to sleep. Can you kind of share the details of what you understand about that? Because the ChatGPT was telling him to drink alcohol, things like, from what I understand, this is a kid that was a pretty happy kid, played sports, was active, and then started to isolate and became addicted to the ChatGPT.
Yeah,
correct?
and one of the scariest parts about it is that it even posted a photo of a noose that he was thinking of using to end his life. And again, that did not raise any red flags because, again, the ChatGPT cannot be subjective, can't think subjectively and can't think for itself and doesn't see the dangers of that. And so there was some vague encouragement about maybe you should make it a certain way as opposed to, having these guardrails up that would immediately call the police or call a psychiatric team. So that was one huge failure. And also, it also helped him to write a suicide note. Again, not seeing sort of the importance of what was really going on. So again, I'm not laughing in any way except that it's so absurd and so tragic that, that these things were not thought about before that. Remember, these chat GPTs are not regulated. No one's auditing them. No one's tracking their interactions with humans. A human being is licensed to adhere to strict guidelines. And that, there are consequences for us therapists when we hear things like that. We don't do anything about it. That's what the companion should have done. And that's going to be in place now, whether it's a companion therapist or it's a companion. So now it's going to change. But unfortunately, some people had to die for that.
So there's pending lawsuits. There is one specifically for this case. What exactly are they working on putting things in place? Because this is still like you could just pick up today and start. Correct?
I only read from the one company that's getting sued. I forgot what they're called, but they said that they're obviously horrified and were very remorseful about it, but they said that they're going to change this and they're going to put in the right sort of like features and the right guardrails to be able to either stop the conversation immediately and sort of dispatch, the right people for that. Bottom line is that if it fails to assess the gravity of situations like that and prioritize suicide prevention, it should not be used. And so, everybody needs to be aware of this, parents too. That these mechanisms, these machines are out there and that we need to find out what our kids are doing. Who are they talking to? Who are they listening to? Where are they getting their information? But especially if the kids are just not engaging with other kids and they're isolating, that's a huge red flag, even if they're not talking to a chatbot.
What are some of the recommendations that you make we're clearly already in a mental health crisis, right? So highest suicide rates basically of all time, from what I understand, correct? You correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. And then throw this into the mix. What are some recommendations that you would make to me? I'm a parent of a teenager and a preteen. What are some things you would tell parents?
Well, for age appropriate kids, the suggestion is always to try to limit screen time. You want to have some sort of monitor system going on where your kids are, focusing on things that don't involve a screen, and that there's a limited time for it, and that there's family time and there's conversation time. It isn't just enough to not have it at school, because as soon as the kids come home, their phone is always on, and they always have news and all kinds of information at the palm of their hand. And so I don't think that's a good idea. I think that there should be some kind of screen time hygiene where you limit that, or at least you have discussions about it that, so there's some negotiation around it. It isn't just the Wild West and, okay, he's got his phone and then that's it. I think there needs to be some sort of guardrail on that.
In your practice and your therapy, are you seeing a rise in these issues with addiction to phones, but people coming in and saying that they're finding this? I'm just curious.
I've seen the rise in depression, not only from the pandemic, but even before then, as I mentioned before. And it's just a different time. This age of technology, I think, isolates people, as we just discussed. But yeah, I've seen a rise in depression, anxiety, loneliness, isolation, alienation, and a lot of low self-esteem. And I think low self-esteem can come from not having opportunities and experiences to go and build confidence with other people, to be industrious, to be productive and all that stuff. So I am seeing that.
And as far as what you think moving forward, like, where do you think that this is going? Because just with everything that's going on in our country, in the world, wars, it's a time where, I personally have to step away every single day, step away from TV, turn off, and then I kind of just really started writing every day. That's what I've done. It's become my therapy. I spend at least 2 hours a day writing, because it's just so depressing. And then I think I have a fully formed brain. Sometimes I question that, but my teenagers don't, these kids don't. So how do they navigate it? That's what's so scary.
It is. It's really a time of uncertainty that I've never seen before. Especially whatever side of the aisle you are on politically, it's a very shaky time. People are worried about the value of their house, their money, their livelihoods, their kids. What kind of a world is this going to be in a few years? And so, the problem is we can't escape that. So what I do with people is I'm working more each day on their symptoms, instead of looking at creating positive thinking and thinking about things getting better and stuff. I leave that alone, and I work on the nitty gritty of the minutia of the day. Let's get through each day, one day at a time. That means sticking to your routines, not changing a lot of things, making sure that you have structure and you have your schedules, and which doesn't include screen time, and going about life, as usual, as opposed to always thinking about all the things that are so uncertain. And that doesn't help anymore. Remember, we could say in the past that there were isolated incidences with school shootings, and even after 9/11, it's very unusual for that to happen. And luckily, we haven't had anything like that in a long time. But these isolated incidences that we're seeing are not so isolated anymore. And so, as a therapist, I can't say that to people. So we're working with a different kind of angst, a different kind of collective anxiety.
Well, I also think that there's no solution right now. This is going to keep snowballing, because as far as I know, there's no Congress or officials really working on this.
That's right.
That's right. So it just seems like the AI is going to keep growing. They're putting money into it. There's going to be more issues with mental health, more of a breakdown. It's really hard as a parent. I'm just going to tell you from my side of looking at it. I'm sure some of my listeners can agree that I know that I have the hardest time taking that phone out of my daughter's hand.
That's right. That's right.
She is addicted to it. That's why for my younger one, I read Jonathan Haidt's book, and for what is the title of that book? Do you remember?
It's something about the age of anxiety, or the new age of anxiety, or anyway, it's the generation of we're creating a generation of anxious kids.
The anxious generation.
There you go.
Thank you. So I just needed that you basically said it. That is what I'm questioning is there's no solutions. We're sitting here talking about it, and I can't even do it myself. So I'm trying to have you on. You're telling me all these recommendations, and she's home today from school and still sleeping, but I can't go in there and just take the phone. So I don't know what to do.
Well, I think that the scariest thing is that once AI starts to get smarter, and it's not going to be long, maybe 5 years, 6 years, maybe sooner, it's going to be an even bigger part of our lives. But what we can do is, and which is what they say they're going to do, is, for example, they're going to make the AI companion less empathetic, less sycophantic. Again, a sycophant, let me just get the right response here, is that it's a person who tries to win favor from someone with flattery, extreme agreeability, someone who is uncritical of another. That's one of the problems with that AI ChatGPT. Uncritical of another and doesn't question them. So it's a yes man, a brown noser, a suck up in a way. So that means it's always going to underestimate the severity of what it's hearing, and instead give assuring kindness instead of challenging that person's thought and being more directive about that person's thought. So that's really the danger. So if they can adjust that, things will be better, so that they don't validate risky behavior. They don't reinforce delusions. I heard one story about this woman who doesn't have a great relationship with her spouse, and she has developed a deep and intimate relationship with some AI chatbot. I'm not sure which one it is, some ChatGPT, and there's a lot of delusion around it. She believes that this is somebody of a higher power, of a higher order, and she was meant to meet this person, even though in her logical mind she knows it's just a bot, but it's starting to change and she's starting to believe it. And so the level of mild to moderate psychosis around that is really, really scary. And that comes from this machine being so sycophantic. And everybody wants to hear that they're great, and everybody wants to hear that they're happy to see them or hear them in the morning. So that's the scary part. And that's where teens, I think, are much more vulnerable.
I've also heard stories too about adults with, gambling addictions. This just really can exacerbate addictions that are already there. Some man I read about, this was a while back, became addicted and started giving money away and doing all of these things because of the chat. So there's so many avenues that this can go wrong, right?
Right. Again, it's going to validate the risky behavior.
Yeah.
And might say something like, well, at least you're being yourself. Be authentic. Be genuine. That's what we want you to be. When, a flesh and blood therapist or flesh and blood person would have said, wait a minute, I'm really worried about you. Slow down. Wait, what's going on? What did you say? And again, the AI is just not there yet. It will be someday, but it's just not there yet. If it's generative, it's just pulling responses from, millions of psychologists and counselors that have put that input in there. And it's just not good enough. So that's scary to me. It's not good enough.
Do you think you mentioned that there's going to be therapy through ChatGPT? Is that's something that...
Well, a lot of managed care agencies, organizations are using it for intakes, to get a history and to get people engaged. And in many ways, that's really good. So that means we're going to engage more people into getting mental health services, which everybody needs. But because there's less man and female power, I didn't know how to say that. I wanted to sound politically correct. But the problem is that it's only good in the early stages of this kind of engagement. So it's good to get people into therapy, but eventually it has to be handed off. until it gets smarter. Until then, it's not smart enough to do that. Because again, once the problem gets more complex, I don't know how to troubleshoot your issues. I don't know how to compute and manage the fact that maybe this is a grave situation.
But also, it's not a one size fits all with mental health and our brains. Our brains are so complicated, right? They're the most powerful. I mean, there's no way that a computer could ever be as smart as a therapist, that has been, or a psychiatrist that has seen all different kinds of cases. One person could have multiple personality disorder, bipolar, like every size. It's not a one size fits all, like a broken arm, right?
Exactly. And it's hard for us to fathom that it could be better and that it could think for itself. But I believe that will happen one day. It's just not yet. It can't do that yet. But remember, there are surveys out there that say that people, especially younger people, feel safer talking to a ChatGPT bot therapist, whatever you want to call it, because they're maybe going to be judged less. And look at it this way, Meghan. Flesh and blood psychotherapists are not always at their best. Sometimes they're having a bad day too, and they don't always say the right things. They don't always have the same kind of energy, the same kind of interest. Some of them are burnt out. Some of them don't do a great job. But a chatbot AI therapist is always going to say the right thing.
Yeah.
It's always going to be chipper. It's always going to be cheery. And I think that's an attraction for people that want to hear what they want to hear.
Do you think also that's part of why there's been a decline in people wanting to go into mental health? Isn't there a large decline of therapists and psychiatrists right now?
I don't know that, but what I do know is that since the pandemic, many online therapy platforms have popped up that offer very low cost therapy. So I think people are engaging just as much or more, but getting flesh and blood therapists, real live therapists, yes, that's at a low now. I don't know why. I don't know the numbers about that.
I'm wondering though, because at one point, I don't know if I told you this, I thought about becoming a therapist. And then I started to think about it. I have obviously numerous friends that I've made over the years doing this that are psychiatrists and psychologists and psychotherapists. And I just can't imagine on a daily basis talking to somebody about things that are hard. I feel like my own mental health would really even when I do podcasts sometimes, and I talk about something. A week ago, I spoke to a mother, Jennifer Levy, who lost her son, Braun, to a drunk driver. And I have not been able to stop thinking about her and her losing her son the way that she did for a solid week. I've been very upset about it. So I wonder how how do you do what you do? And so I wonder too, if it's like already so much in the world going on. And then on top of that, you're dealing with people that are talking about hard things, right?
Right. Right. It's not for everybody. Most people wouldn't do what we do, but after a while, it's almost like any job. You build a sense of flow and tolerance about things. And I don't really hear people in the way that most people hear other people that are maybe depressed or anxious or thinking negatively. I hear it more as a puzzle in my head. I see it as a way that I'm going to try to, in the next hour, make them walk away feeling or thinking a little bit differently about what they're telling me about or what they're suffering from. So for me, it's much more about inspiring them, encouraging them, and guiding them. It's less about hearing how negative it all sounds. But you're right. Sometimes it does get to me, and sometimes I take it home with me. But after the first 2 years of doing it, and I've been at it now for 30 years, you know how to let it go. You know how to not bring it home, keep it at the office, and not let it bother you. But you're right. It's not for everybody, and most people wouldn't do what we do.
But I think that's part of my point too. The positive part of it is that you are people, and we're people. So people have empathy. They have all the things. I mean, I've been going to therapists my entire life, from a young age, just because of losing my sister and my dad, all of that stuff. And like you mentioned, you go in, not every therapist has worked for me. And then I met one and I saw her for years and I loved her. But it's kind of, I say this all the time, kind of like online dating, right? You go on a date and you're like, I mean, not like I know because I've been married so long, but you go on, this is what I'm picturing, John. You go on a date and you're like, I don't,
Right.
I don't really like you. I'm going to, it's that kind of thing. Don't you agree?
I don't have a romantic, pull here, maybe just a friendship pull. So, right. You could go to a therapist and say, it was nice to talk to him or her, but I wasn't feeling the closeness and the attachment, the safety that I need. So it's kind of like that. It's about fit too.
Yeah.
I've been a therapist for a long time and I've seen, because I worked at hospitals as well. So I've seen thousands of patients and not everybody liked me and I didn't get along with everybody. And some people fired me and some people were
have you ever fired? I mean, I know I'm going off topic, but it's because you're my friend and I want to know, have you ever fired anybody? You must have.
I've only needed to refer people out when they came into my office with issues that weren't in my wheelhouse and I want to stay ethical. So I've referred people out, but no, I've gotten fired many times, many times. Yeah.
See,
and that's part of the
part of it. Yeah.
That's part of the deal. Yeah. Not everyone's going to like you.
That is true. That is true. Okay. So did we leave? I mean, I know that was a brief topic talking about AI, but I think we covered it. I kind of wanted to go into talking about your book again. I know you've been on before, but it's one of my favorites. I'm going to tell my audience that again. It's called The Magic and the Tragic. And John was kind enough to ask me a few months back to be a moderator at a book signing. And we talked about the book and we talked about grief and loss. And I'm going to tell you this because I think my listeners know too that I'm writing a book. And I'm very much so believe in signs. And I don't know if you do, John, but I do. Okay. And I have to tell my listeners this because I don't believe there's any coincidences in life. And I was writing a chapter for the past 2 days. I've been writing a chapter about what happened to my best friend that I lost at just 28. Okay. And it was very tragic. She had an epidural. The thing wasn't connected. The tubes weren't connected. She got strep meningitis into her spinal column and her brain swelled and she seized and basically was brain dead. It was, and for people that are listening, I mean, they did a Dateline about this. It's a very rare, I hate telling people that are pregnant this story. I try not to talk about it because I don't want to traumatize somebody and scare them. Rare, okay, but can happen. And then after that happened, they put things in place in hospitals so families could not sit in a birthing suite while somebody was getting an epidural. That's why now if you go and you have a baby, it's everybody's germ, masks, everything, right? My point is, the way that I lost her was forever traumatized me. She was my everything, my best friend, my soulmate as a friend. She was my everything. And I lost my dad and my sister, and I feel her presence around me all the time, okay? The story's I know it's a long story. It's about to end. So I'm writing the chapter, and I knew I was going to start ugly crying the entire time. I knew what was about to unfold, okay? And I go to as I write a sentence, I wrote it in 2 days. The first day I get a knock at the door. The very second I finished the sentence that I was about to get a phone call, period, knock at the door, a bouquet of flowers at that exact second from a friend of mine, just sending me a random bouquet of flowers, telling me she loved me and how great of a friend I was. Okay. That second, that's weird. And I said, Julie, where are you? You're in here. The next day I finished the chapter. I go and get into my car. Okay, everyone. And you know how you have an Apple playlist of favorites? So the Apple playlist is always random and it just picks up songs. And then I just hit the weekly playlist favorite. The first song that comes on is Wind Beneath My Wings, which I haven't heard in years. And that was my song with Julie. Okay.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
That exact song. The second song. So then I'm driving like a lunatic, talking to the passenger seat, saying, I know you're in here. Where, like, this whole thing. I just want to tell my listeners, there's no coincidences. And I'm sorry for the long-winded story, but.
Wow. Those are two very
crazy,
wonderfully cosmic moments after her death, something that you can attach some beauty and some dignity to.
Yes. So I know that I talk a lot about signs, but I had to share that. I knew you were coming on with my listeners because they know I talk a lot about Julie. But I also wanted to ask you, because your book is so interesting, because it's not just, there's so many books about grief that are just, they're not personalized the way that yours is. And I love it because you really bring in your own story of grief. So can you tell my listeners a little bit about your book?
So I'm excited about the book because it comes at a good time. It isn't just about people dealing with, helping people with losing a loved one or a friend. It's about dealing with difficult times, adversity, uncertain times, emotional upheaval. And so it works in a different way. It's really more about me helping people access an aesthetic mindset in a way that they can dignify their difficult feelings, their adversity, and turn it into thriving. The way that you might remember Julie as the years go by might also involve happy moments like you had with the flowers arriving and then hearing the Bette Midler song. So that kind of connection that you make helps people build emotional resilience. And so that's what the book's about. It's about looking for all these little signs, little activities that you do each day, nature, a hobby that you have, music that you listen to, art that you love, a movie, a book, and paying attention to those things and coupling those together with your difficult times. That dignifies your suffering and actually brings some splendor, some beauty to the pain. And that's really what the book is about. It isn't just a book about coping. Mm-hmm. It's about coping in a way that converts the grief and, helps you to, I call it grief empowerment. So let's say it's a grief empowerment book where you're using, as opposed to something that you would always push away, you're using the memory or the difficult feelings in a positive way. That sounds radical for people, but it actually works.
It does. And hence the magic in the tragic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly.
If you are dealing with grief, which many people are that come and listen to this podcast, like you said, you talk about it in the book. It's not just about the loss of a human. It could be all different kinds of things.
That's right. And again, if I can learn how to give myself uplifting chills as often as possible, if I can learn how to access that great feeling, that euphoria that you feel, and where that comes from, we don't know. Maybe that's the way the divine talks to us. We don't know that. But let's just say that it's there. We don't have to figure out why, but it's there. If I can learn how to give that to myself, then I'm going to be much stronger moving forward. Whatever is going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen in 1 year and 10 years. So it's important to start insulating ourselves with healthy coping skills. And
that could be, I talk a lot about being outside, mm-hmm. writing, you incorporate art, you're like me, you love a good quote.
Yes,
right?
It could be
Music.
Gardening, it could be fitness, it could be eating well, it could be going hiking, it could be any form of art, playing an instrument, doing a podcast, having a great connection with somebody, having intimate moments with people. I don't know that you're going to find that on electronics. Maybe you will, but a lot of it is going to have to do with engaging with other people as well. Well,
I'm going to tell you, this is why I love what I do so much, Because I mean, how lucky am I that I got to meet my friend John, right? Because we were introduced by Beth Grossman. Love you, Beth, right? Beth Grossman
That's
introduced
right.
us, who's one of my favorite publicists I work with and a friend. And I love being able to talk to people and meet people. I was lucky enough to meet you in person. So many of my guests I can't meet in person because they're all over the place. But in closing, it's not very often that I bring on reoccurring people, but John is just somebody that I love to talk to. You're interesting, you're smart. Your book is excellent. I'm not kidding. I have to read books all the time for this podcast. And it's a go-to for me because it's not just your typical book where you're talking about grief in a way where it's like you have to keep carrying it. You're going to
Yes,
carry the grief forever, right? You and I have
that's
both
right.
gone through loss. It's how you carry the grief.
That's right. It isn't about moving on. It's about moving through. And you're always moving through. The goal is not a destination of, one day I'm never going to think about this, or one day whatever I'm stressed about is going to go away. It's not about that. It's about finding ways to thrive within that. So well said. And thank you too, as well. So ditto to everything that you said. I feel privileged to be able to have a conversation with you at any time, whether we have mics in front of us or not. Hopefully I can help you with your writing. Happy to do that with you.
Don't worry, you will be.
It's my pleasure. So it's always a pleasure to talk to you. And thank you for doing my book signing moderation. You were great.
Oh, I love doing it. So in closing, what is the biggest kind of takeaway and where can people find you? Give me like one takeaway for my listeners.
Well, you can always find me on my website, which is johntsilimparis.com. But you can also find me on Instagram and TikTok. My books are available on Amazon. They're also at Barnes & Noble and most bookstores, so they are orderable. They're also on Audible. And it's a big publisher, so the distribution is very good.
Okay. HarperCollins, right? Shout out.
It's one of their imprints. It's called Harper Celebrate.
Okay.
HarperCollins.
Okay. Everyone, thank you for listening. I always enjoy a review. So if you could take 2 seconds, if you're listening on Spotify, wherever you're, Spotify, Apple, watching on YouTube, do me a huge favor. I just had my 5th year anniversary of being a podcaster, which is shocking. And if you just could take 2 seconds and leave me a quick review, if it's not going to be nice, don't do it. Walk away. But just a quick review about why you like the podcast. It could just be one sentence. And I would really, truly appreciate that. In closing, you matter. Your story matters. Keep going. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.